Greetings, everybody. Robin here from Courage is Secure. Welcome to episode 123 of Relentless. Well, imagine being wrongfully imprisoned for almost 40 years and still counting, despite being proven innocent. We're going to watch a short video before we get started today. Here we go.
Well, back in town, an accused assassin is sitting behind bars in Michigan right now, linked to a murder he says he couldn't have committed. The press labeled Frederick Freeman the Ninja Killer. As Channel 7's Bill Proctor reports, the Ninja wants a rematch in court.
The more alibi witnesses that came forward, the harder they were on me. But when it came time for the polygraph and they wouldn't give it to me, that was when I began to say to myself, this is it, they're going to set me up. They took the martial arts training and made it some kind of a ninja thing. That I had deadly, lethal killing skills, that I could do amazing feats with my body. I mean, it just went on and on and on.
From inside the walls of the state's Macomb Regional Correctional Facility, Frederick Freeman pleads his case for a new trial. He was convicted in 1986 of the ambush murder of Scott Macklem, the son of Croswell's mayor. It was a bold, broad daylight killing on the campus of St. Clair Community College.
I'm confident that we have the right person in jail.
But Fred Freeman insists that he was in Escanaba when Macklem was killed. Among a laundry list of reasons he wants a new trial, Freeman says the jury ignored a half-dozen people, credible witnesses who testified that he was 400 miles away from the crime scene when the murder was committed.
All righty, everybody. So we will see you in a jiffy. We're going to be joined by a wonderful, wonderful lady all the way over there in the good old US of A, Miss Joy Marie Mann. See you all in tick. All right, greetings, everybody. Like I said, welcome to episode 123 of Relentless. It is the 5th of November, 2025. On November 5th, 1986, Scott Macklem was shot in a parking lot in St. Clair County Community College in Huron, Michigan, where he was a student, despite having over a dozen witnesses stating he was almost 500 miles away and no evidence connecting him to the crime. Fred Freeman, now Temujin Kensu, was arrested and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That was written by the wonderful guest today, Joy Marie Mann, who has written a book about Temujin Kensu, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Joy to the show today. Hello, Joy. How are you? Have I got you on mute or are you on mute? You're on mute, my love.
Sorry about that. Thanks so much for
Okay.
having me. I'm excited to be here and also to share Temujin's story.
I was flabbergasted. We made connections with each other over X, and I had never heard of Temujin before. And of course, the first thing I did was have stalk you on X, and then I saw that you'd written a book about him, and then started looking at that. And like any good person who has their downtime, I spend some of that listening to true crime channels. And so when I heard about Temujin, I just thought, holy moly. So we are going to talk about Temujin today, and it's decades. It's a decades story, excuse me. But before we get there, do you want to introduce yourself? Because you are a journalist, author, activist, and a self-described, mostly blind but aware AF person. Do you want to introduce yourself a bit more to the audience?
Sure. So yes, my name is Joy Marie Mann. I've done a YouTube show for about 8.5 years now. And it all, it's politics and activism and organizing, things like that. And also interviewing people who are dealing with struggles, any kind of struggles, be it racism, sexism, being unhoused, anything like that, just trying to show humanity of people. That was my goal from the get. So I've been doing that over 8 years. And yes, I'm an organizer, activist, and yeah, about 3.5 years ago, I unexpectedly lost about 85% of my eyesight when I was 40. And it happened overnight, literally. And everything changed. So I had to kind of decide, do I still want to do my show? Do I still want to write? Do I still want to do these things? And it's been a process, but when you're passionate about something and you're stubborn and like I am, you're just like, yeah, I'm going to do it regardless, if I have to change the trajectory or, the means on how I do it. That's, it's been a process, but yeah.
It definitely sounds like you're a relentless person. Shall we say that?
Definitely.
So we've had a short news clip from a very long time ago. I would say that's probably from the 90s, just a
Yeah,
rough guesstimation.
I believe
Um,
it's 1997. Yeah.
1997. Holy moly! Before we get on, because we're going to cover as much as we can about Temujin, but before we get there, is there some part of his background, just to kind of let people know about him before all of this happened? What kind of life was he living before all of this happened?
Yeah. So, and I definitely get into this in the book as well. Like so many people who find themselves in prison, whether, they do something or not, whether it's wrongful conviction, he had a horrible childhood, very abusive, went to live with his grandparents. His mom was just a terror, physically, emotionally, psychologically, very, very abusive. And, like I said, as many people who end up in prison, whether it's through their own actions or not, then he finally left home when he was about 16 and he never looked back. He did odd jobs here and there. When he was, I want to say 20, he wrote a bad check on purpose. And that ended up, he caught a charge for that, for writing a bad check. He admits it. It was really stupid. But he was arrested for that and so on. Other than that, it was more so just like being a 20-year-old asshole, if I could say that, just being, like this young dude full of hubris. Like he loved karate, he loved learning martial arts, which they absolutely used against him, even though it was just a hobby. But aside from being like this, very abused child, just like a regular 80s 20-something guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think that short, I think it was 1 minute piece we played at the beginning, is sort of, describes there how an interest of his, a hobby, which happens to be karate, is used against him. So we've got to go back in time. It's funny, when I speak to people, often many people that I speak to, we kind of feel like we've been in this kind of twilight zone for the past 5 years. The world is just nuts. So we've got to take our minds back to the 80s, when this gentleman Scott Macklem was murdered. Can you tell us about the crime? What happened?
Sure. Yeah, so Scott Macklem, he was 20 years old. So I just realized it's 39 years ago today. And he was at his community college parking lot. Someone shot him one time in the side of the back, and it was fatal. And there was no gun at the crime scene, nothing like that. It was basically just something very quick. And he happened to be the mayor's son, which is not good, because then they were like extremely quick to close that case. They wanted someone to pay for that. There are some things pointing to the fact that he did sell drugs. Whether that's the case or not, it's likely. However, we don't know for sure if that was how he ended up losing his life or what, but he was shot once in the community college parking lot, and there really were no leads for anything.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Nobody actually saw him being shot. Is that right?
No. A couple of people said they heard a loud bang, but they thought it was a car backfiring. So no, but nobody actually saw anything.
Mm-hmm. So this, I guess, a few things combined at this part of the story is, what was it that made the police approach Temujin? And, I know that there's much to his story that he was 400 miles away. So can you talk to us about why did they suspect Temujin in the first place? And, I guess the theory that they decided was the reason that Temujin had been the person who committed this crime.
Well, Scott Macklem actually had a girlfriend named Crystal Merrill, and Crystal was Temujin's ex. Now, Temujin had never met Scott, and sorry, I had to sneeze. Excuse me. He had never met Scott, but they did. His ex was Scott's current girlfriend, Crystal Merrill. So that kind of connected them inadvertently, in that one way. Now, Temujin, yes, he moved almost 500 miles away, actually, to get away from her, because she was stalky and accusatory and just not a good person. So when that happened, who do you want to look at? Yeah, you're going to look at exes, people like that who may have had it out for him, especially if he did have a connection to drugs and he is the mayor's son. You don't want to go down that route. You want to look at, okay, but who else could it have been? Because we can't let this get out. It was re-election time, you know, things like that. You can't let that come out. So we're just going to see what else. And Temujin was a perfect patsy. He had that, the record from the false check, from the bad check he wrote. So he was already in the system. It was during Satanic Panic. And he had long hair. He was a singer in a rock band. He had a leather jacket, you know, just drove a motorcycle, just the stereotypical, oh my God, he's so bad. He loved martial arts. He had nunchucks, like just, you know, very easy to paint him as this like assassin guy because he's so scary and look, he doesn't care about anyone but himself. He was just the easiest person to pin it on. Unfortunately, it worked.
I've never heard that term before, satanic panic before. That's a new one for me.
Oh, yes. There's a case called West Memphis 3. And same thing happened with them. It was when all this happened, it was when they started they had that hearing and put warning labels on CDs, like, you know, like listener discretion and parental advisory and stuff. And it was all about, you know, this like, be careful because your kids will play the records backwards and Satan speaks to them and like all this crazy shit. And it was literally around that time. So, you know, the jury, you know, hears these, oh my God, he had a leather jacket and oh my God, that's so crazy. Now we're like, yeah, so, but 40 years ago, that was, wow, he's got to be seriously hardcore. He drives a motorcycle and sings in a rock and roll band. And it was that Satanic Panic stage where it was like, ooh, witchcraft is all the rage. And, you know, it was very much, we didn't have the internet. So it was, you know, very much, you know, someone would say something on the news and all of a sudden it's like, fever pitch, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, they're taking over our children, it's mind control, like that kind of thing. And it was during that he was arrested.
It's amazing, you know, thinking back to, because it's 1986, isn't it? When Scott was murdered. I mean, the 80s was such a different time, wasn't it? I mean, even in the 90s, the mid 90s, they were saying that, you know, video games and music was responsible for, you know, killings and all this sort of stuff as well, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. God. So we've just touched on Temujin moving away, you know, 400 or 500 miles away. So how did the prosecution manage to use that as part of their theory? You know, that how did they square that up? Because if he's 400, 500 miles away, what are they saying? What's the prosecution saying to square that up to where Temujin's there and shot Scott in Michigan?
Well, initially, because of this whole, you know, martial arts thing and everything, at first they asked him if he could teleport.
Stop it.
No, I'm serious. Like, this case is bananas. Crystal Merrill, who was the one who brought him into the mix, the ex-girlfriend, she said that she witnessed him jumping over 40 feet out of a tree onto concrete ground. Like, this is who they tried to portray him as. Like, yeah, they asked if he could teleport. they went up to his house almost 500 miles away. They trashed it, searching for hours without a warrant, and found absolutely nothing. But they were determined to still put it on him. So they arrested him. They brought him back, and they never once asked him questions. They never gave him a chance to make a statement. They never interrogated him. They never interviewed him. They literally just threw him right in prison, which is completely against the law. And he kept begging to talk to someone. They would not talk to him. They refused. So then they had to come up with another theory. Wait, how did he do this? Because at this time, he's 8.5 hours away. It's Michigan. It's snowy. It's, there's feet of snow on the ground. He's supposed to drive in a car that he had proof was broken down. And, was a clunker, and he had to get repaired all the time. He has receipts for it and everything. But okay, now he got there though. Somehow he got there and he killed Scott somehow. So then at that point, they were left to come up with another theory. And their theory was that he hired a private plane to go from his place to almost 500 miles away to commit the shooting and then fly back. Few issues with that. The airport was closed because there was a blizzard. He was on welfare and had no money to hire a private plane. No flight logs, no plane, no pilot, no nothing, just a theory. And the thing that I find so interesting about that is by going with that theory, they are inadvertently admitting the fact that he quite literally was almost 500 miles away. And that's why he would have needed the plane to get there. But somehow with that suggestion, even without any proof, anything, seemed to have credence to the jury, unfortunately. But yeah, that's how they said that he must have done it.
Wasn't there a number of witnesses where he was that verified he was nowhere near Michigan as well?
Yeah, there were 17. There were 17 people. Yeah.
So they're all just liars, are they? They're just all liars.
All of them, including the ones who couldn't stand him. They're all lying on his behalf. 9 of them actually testified at the trial that they saw him, and some of them were like not fans of him. They didn't like him at all, but they still went all that way to testify on his behalf. I saw him there. So yes, all of them apparently lied, and there's some big conspiracy to get him off the hook with like over a dozen people.
I mean, it's a very good point. Them suggesting that he hired a private jet would mean that they did believe he was 400 or 500 miles away to begin with. But then they'd have to. They would have had to have come up with. You would think, I don't know, this case sounds pretty bananas. They would have had to come up with a motive. Why would someone who's on benefits hire a private jet through a blizzard to go and murder someone? Is it just because of drugs? Is it, or what theory did they have?
Temujin has never done drugs. He's very, very, very like health conscious. He's like, he won't even like drink soda, he's like, I mean, he's 62 and his muscles are like his, like, I mean, he's like a body is a temple, that kind of guy. But they never thought it was that. They thought it was the ex-girlfriend. Like somehow he still loves her and it's jealousy. Even though in court, she admitted they hadn't even spoken for 5 months. It's their theory was he was jealous and wanted her new boyfriend to pay for, taking her away from him. But he moved to get away from her. That's the irony. So yeah, that was their theory. It was all to have her to himself. Interestingly enough, he was living with his girlfriend who was 7 months pregnant, or excuse me, 8 months pregnant with his child. So he was already with someone else. He really didn't care that she was with someone else. He was.
Unbelievable. So, oh, gosh.
I know, it's just it's mind blowing.
It sounds like to me, I mean, I'm sure, people like yourself and many other people have spent years, looking into this, researching this, writing about it, speaking to Temujin himself, all these sorts of things. But the research that I did in preparation to speaking to you today, and just the 25-minute conversation we've had up until now, kind of sounds like they just wanted a body, a person to put in jail.
Absolutely.
Because they needed someone to exist in prison and take the fall for it.
Yes. And unfortunately, he was so easy. And, when it came to court, he had no money. It's a class issue. He has no money. So they give him a court appointed, attorney who probably has 30 other cases on his desk. His attorney was disbarred for being a cokehead and a crackhead. That did not give him a new trial. It still stood. Regardless, they laid out a cafeteria sized table in the courtroom and put all of these things on it, like swords and knives and all these things, and laid it in front of the jury box, porn magazine, all these things. None of it was Temujin's, absolutely none of it. And they just laid it on a big table, right, pushed up to the jury box. And none of it was his. But furthermore, Scott was shot. So I'm not sure what any of that had to do with anything. But while, the defense was talking, the prosecutor would hold up a knife and go, ow, 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 oh my God, this is so sharp, like in the middle of it, just theatrics. So it was, we think about it now and we're like, oh my God, the jury was so stupid. But back in 86, they didn't have true crime podcasts. They didn't, being on a jury now, we are so much more aware of what to look for, and what is reasonable doubt. And I put proof of a lot of these things in court documents in my book. The prosecution actually gave them gave the jury this instructions that said, you don't have to use reasonable doubt in this case, which is absolutely not legal to say that. So, I mean, also, it turns out the prosecutor, his defense, and the judge all had worked together before. They all knew each other. The judge had a drunk driving record. The prosecution had drunk driving record and was actually fired from the force because for mob involvement and all of these. I mean, it was every kind of bad horror / like Chuck Norris movie. This was it, like in real life.
Just laying out all the machetes and pornos and all these things. Even if they whoever they belong to, you know, trying to disparage a person's character like that just seems absolutely ridiculous. Like you said, you know, thinking now, and you know, if they tried, if a jury, excuse me, if prosecution tried to do that now, they'd be laughed at. But was there? I mean, did they have any evidence of Temujin being there in Michigan to do that?
Absolutely not. There was no murder weapon, and they did find fingerprints on a spent bullet casing. They did not match his.
Huh.
They never tested it to see who it matches. It was tested in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and of course it still wasn't his, but they ran it through CODIS, the system, and it came up as no match. We're fighting to try and get it tested again because 15 years, a lot more people have been arrested since then. But the fact is, the only thing found at the scene of the crime was fingerprints, and they didn't match his.
Standing. Absolutely standing. So, you know, apart from having no evidence, no physical evidence of him being there, having 17 witnesses confirm that he was, you know, hundreds of miles away, we have to talk about the, let's say, let's term it so-called eyewitness testimony, because I know there was an inmate that testified, and I do have a short video of that inmate. But was there, I wasn't able to confirm if this was true or not. Was there one witness that was hypnotized prior
That is
to
correct.
going to court?
Yes, that's correct. His name was Rennie Gobain. And he said he saw a car driving by in the parking lot, a crowded community college parking lot. He saw a car. Wow. And it was someone with a hat pulled down who was like hunched down and driving by slowly. Then he changed it to speeding by. Regardless, he's saying it's Temujin. Did he see him anywhere near the where Scott was shot? Absolutely not. Rennie was with two other people who said they didn't see anything. They're not sure what he was talking about. Rennie said he pulled out a pencil and paper and wrote down the license plate number. They said, we never saw him do that. We were right with him. And he actually wanted to be a cop. So, I mean, what better way than to help solve a murder case? And yeah, I mean, he came up with this, you know, random license plate number, in his head. And he's like, the license plate number was this and that. And they said, well, no, there's no car coming up with that. So they had his college professor, who was interested in hypnotism, look up how to hypnotize someone for the first time, has him come in the classroom. It's not a hypnotist or a psychologist. It's just a teacher, and has him hypnotize him. He gives 9 different license plate numbers. And somehow, I have no idea how, but the 9th one came back to a car that didn't fit his description, but it was a car that was demolished several years ago. And they take the license plates when they're done, when they come off cars, and they destroy them and put them in a locked dumpster and stuff. So it's impossible someone saw that license plate anyway. But his car description changed color, size, make, model more times than we can count. So even the basics changed continuously.
Astounding.
It's actually helping. You would think all that stuff is actually helping Temujin, because people are coming forward and saying, I saw this, and they're immediately discredited. So that should help
Yeah.
him. No, it didn't.
So I'm just flabbergasted, Joy, honestly. And this I perhaps before I play the clip, I really want to play this for people now because um anyone that spends any time watching me knows I'm not a huge fan of corporate media. I don't think they're capable of doing their job properly. But, sometimes we do have really good investigative journalists, and sometimes, especially when we're looking back in history, it's very useful for people to see clips, and this is one of the ones that I want to show about one of the eyewitnesses, an inmate. Can you introduce the inmate and his testimony just before I play the clip?
Yes, and I do want to say the first clip you showed, the gentleman interviewing him, his name is Bill Proctor. He was a cop turned journalist, then private investigator. He has been with Temujin since day one, still to this day. I've been on programs with him, still talking about the case as just months ago. He is still one of his biggest supporters. And he's the reason that he was able to get several lie detector tests, which he passed all of them, as did his girlfriend who was pregnant. And the reason that's important is because this man who was a cop, journalist, private investigator, still to this day fights for him. And the reason he got him the lie detector test is because the prison kept refusing to give him one. And they kept saying, okay, we'll give you one. And he would get ready to leave his cell to go get one. And he would show up and they'd say, you don't have an appointment. I don't know what you're talking about. Because they didn't want him to take one because he was, he passed. All of them, including, so did Michelle, his girlfriend. And they knew that would sway the jury. Now, lie detectors don't have as much weight, but back then it held a lot. So shout out to Bill because he has been with him since day one. As far as this goes, this is Philip Joplin. Philip was an inmate who was asked by the prosecution and the MDOC, who's the Michigan Department of Corrections. They were asked by the system essentially to entrap Temujin, get him to talk about, what he did and things like that. So they sent in Philip Joplin and his cousin to, talk to him, try to get him to say things. And so they let both of them in there. Temujin is, like, when I say genius IQ, I mean, he has an endemic memory. You'll talk to him and he's like, oh, it's statute 712 on page 85, part A. Like, he's off the charts. And they send these two guys in his cell he's never met, never talked to them, never heard of them, and they come in and they're like, so tell us about the murder. I mean, he's not dumb. Like, come on, that's a setup. He tells them nothing. He's just like, I'm innocent. I've said I'm innocent from day one. I'm not going to admit to something I didn't do, even if it gets me out of here. I didn't do anything. But Philip Joplin is offered an opportunity by the prosecution to go to a halfway house and get out of jail and go there. So he decides to lie on the stand and say, oh yeah, he confessed, he said it all. He admitted everything. He's definitely guilty, even though his cousin, who was also in the room, took the stand and said, no, Temujin said the entire time he had nothing to do with it. But they did honor the deal. Joplin got out. He ended up right back in prison. And then later, Joplin did recant when he was on his deathbed of cancer many, 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 many years later.
Well, we are going to watch that clip. Astounding. Joy? It's been a whole week of being flabbergasted, I tell you. It's here
I
we go,
still
everybody.
am,
The
yeah.
case was built on the testimony of a jailhouse snitch, small-time criminal Philip Joplin, who lied about a Freeman confession. Before he died, Joplin admitted to me his statements to the jury were fabricated.
Prosecutor's office told me that when I made that statement to make sure that I turned towards the jury and looked at the jury.
But did Mr. Freeman ever say that to you?
No,
Did he ever say something about the victim screaming when he shot him?
no,
Did he ever say he used a shotgun to kill somebody?
no.
To spend all my time telling anybody who would listen that I'm innocent, and suddenly to come forward and say, oh, but I'll tell you that I did it, and plus I'll tell you details about it, and that was, that was very shocking.
I interviewed
Astounding. I'm terribly sorry for the low audio there, everybody, but I think you're able to catch most of it there. Just astounding.
It is. And I do want to correct myself. It actually wasn't the MDOC. It was entirely the prosecution who set that up. But yes, I mean, he recanted and they tried to, dismiss, oh, well, he recanted in video, but not, entirely in a written statement, which is an absolute lie. I put the written statement in my book. It's several pages of how he was told he should do this, what he would receive. And, if he did, I have the papers that show from the judge, from the prosecution with their signatures on it saying, you will get this. They got him like I think like a TV, a VCR, all these things. They wanted him trapped.
What happens, when somebody recants like that, whether it's, 12 months later or many years later, like this situation, what happens with his case? Can it be retried or?
Well, it should have been grounds for an appeal immediately, without question. But so should have his, lawyer being disbarred.
Yeah.
He did apply for an appeal. It did not go through. I think, at this point, it's been 39 years. And at this point, it's the more he's in there, the more people are involved, and the more people who would have to admit they are corrupt to the core. They cost this man almost 40 years of his life. And, you're going back almost 40 years of people who would have, who would need to have this culpability in order for this to happen. And I think, even though the appeal was completely valid, even if people are saying, there's no way this happened, despite the fact that I've laid out all this proof, there is no one in their right mind who should say he doesn't, at the very least, deserve a new trial, at the very least. Because all of these things are so illegal and immoral and conflict of interest and everything that could possibly happen, except a false confession, has happened in his story. So the fact that he did actually do several appeals and was found to be essentially innocent in 2 of them by a judge, Denise Page Hood. She reviewed it and said, okay, no, this is getting thrown out. This is absurd. And that was very, very powerful because she was a sitting judge next to the judge who actually helped frame him. And they were working together, and she still stood up to him and said, no, this case is abysmal. He needs to be let out. And then, of course, that judge overruled it. he got involved. He ended up overruling it. He said it was technicalities, that he signed the form too late, and just absolute nonsense. And that happened twice.
You
And now,
sign the
mhm.
you mean sign the form too late for
Temujin
what?
signed the form too late to appeal for this. Essentially, even though he didn't. It's the only thing they could think of to try and discount, Judge Pagehood's declaration that he should be let out.
Is he still a judge now?
He's not. He's not. Most of the people in the in this story are already dead. And that's kind of a problem, because you can't, how are you going to go back to trial when most of the people aren't even alive? It actually kind of hurts his case, because you can't take them to trial and have them on the stand and be like, actually, that's not what you said before. They're already gone.
Well, I mean, you just said there, if they had another trial, and they'd have to admit the judiciary, my conspiracy allegedly is rotten to the core.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there also, has there been conversations about perhaps the person or people involved in actually murdering Scott perhaps are still alive, and if that information ever came out would be detrimental for whatever reason as well, possibly? Is that something that people you know throwing up as a possibility as well?
That is something I get into in the book. I don't mention his name because I don't want to incriminate him, even though I have my thoughts.
Mhm.
There was a guy in prison who Temujin was actually walking by and heard a guy talking about his lawyer. And he was like, "Oh, you know him?" And the guy was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Can I listen to how you know him?" And they started talking. They talked for about a half hour, and he goes, "He was my lawyer, and that's why I'm in here." And he's like, "Oh my God, you're the ninja guy that they framed." And they
Mm.
started talking, and this guy said to Temujin, "I know who did it." And he said, "This is the car. This is the license plate. This is the guy." It turns out the guy was driving his sister's car that night, admittedly, matches the description, matches the license plate, matches everything. He lived in Scott Macklum's hometown. I mean, everything matches 100%, but they never looked into him, never asked him a single question. So here's a guy who's saying just randomly, "I know this person, this description," and it actually ends up matching. But this guy's in prison. How would he have known, this? And at the very least, the fact that he's saying it should have been credence enough for them to look into it. And they
Mhm.
didn't.
So, of course, there's much more to this, but the fact that there's 17 witnesses saying that Temujin was nowhere near that place. There was no physical evidence. We've got a witness that was hypnotized. We have an inmate who ended up recanting his testimony. All these sorts of things. The fact of the matter is, Temujin is still in prison.
Yes.
What is it? 40 years now? 40 years?
39. Yep. And counting.
Before we started the show, Joy, I asked you if there's something that we want to make sure that we do talk about, and one of those things is Temujin's health. Now, you know, when he went into prison, he was a young man. You've just said, what is he, 62 now, did you say?
He's 62. He went in at 23.
Can you talk to us about, you know, briefly his life in prison, but in particular his health and what's going on there, still being in prison at 62?
Yeah. I mean, he's very trusted by the inmates in prison. He is, he writes letters for them. A lot of them are illiterate, and he helps write letters to their loved ones for them. He pushes around people in wheelchairs. He helps people if they need money to buy things in the store, the prison store. He does things for the prisoners, and because of that, he fears none of them. They go to him if they have problems, and he kind of advises him, things like that. So he is very trusted, thankfully. That, however, upsets the prison staff because they don't want him to be liked. They don't want these things. He does his legal work, and he's incredibly well versed on legal work, as probably anyone would be in that situation. And they last month they set him up. They had someone come in his cell with a Wi-Fi stick and said, "Hey man, look what I got." And all of a sudden, just randomly, here comes all the staff, the corrections officers, and throw him into isolation. And while he was in there, he became ill. He had to go to the hospital. They would not tell his wife, Paula, what was going on. The only reason she knew is because a fellow inmate called her and said they threw him in the hole because they set him up. They won't tell any of us. She was calling the hospital. They said, "We've been given directive. We are not allowed to tell you anything." So he was in solitary for day after day after day, and none of us had any idea what was going on, why he was in the hospital, why he was in there. And this happens a lot. The other day, and they've done this before, they don't want him to have, he has a tablet. It doesn't have internet or anything, but it's something they can type on. It's a word processor. Like they can use like Windows, to write letters and things like that. And they use, it's called JPay. You have to pay to send them emails, of course. But that's how they correspond, things like that. They took that away from him, even though it's completely legal. Everyone has them. They buy them themselves. It's not contraband. They went in his cell. They took his typewriter and smashed it in a million pieces right in front of him, because him applying for legal help and stating things, stating legality and, the issues wrong with his case, that is terrifying to them. So that's one of the reasons I said, okay, do I have your blessing to write a book? Because if they sue me, I'm screwed, but I'd rather that than, him losing him and nobody knowing the story. So yeah, his prison life he is quite sick. He has a brain tumor. He has a lot of disabilities. He wears braces on his legs sometimes that they take away from him and don't allow him to use. They don't give him medication. They don't give him chemo. They refuse to give him any treatments. They won't even let him have over-the-counter vitamins. He goes out in the prison yard and eats dandelion to just get like little bits of vitamins. They punish him day in and day out to try and break him. But he is an incredibly strong person. I am constantly amazed. And also I'm amazed how kind he is, because I think if I were in that position, admittedly, I think I would hate the entire world and just be miserable. But I always ask him, why are, he'll call me and say, how are you doing? Like, what? Why are you calling me? Like, but that's who he is. He changed his name from Fred Freeman because he became a Buddhist. He is more so a Christian now. But that is kind of where he doesn't proselytize or anything, because I'm certainly not, but that is kind of where he gets, a lot of the strength. But yeah, he's always wanted to help. He created something called Kensu's Canines, which he gets dogs for people when they're being released so that they can have some kind of healing process.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful, and it has changed people's lives, and it's helped them acclimate when they're released and back into society. They have this little animal that is a companion. But his day-to-day is extremely difficult. The other day he was giving an inmate in a wheelchair, he was pushing him to like the hospital in the prison, and they gave him a ticket and said, why are you in the area of this prison? And he's like, I'm trying to wheel him. He's something's wrong with him. He asked me to help to get him, to medical. And they're like, no, here's a ticket. You shouldn't be in this area. So it's constantly just like trying to discredit him. And unfortunately it works.
So just did I hear you say chemo?
Yes. He's supposed to have it. His doctor stated he should have it. He can have it.
Yep.
Other treatments, he has autoimmune diseases, things like that. They just, even though doctor's orders that he was supposed to have a surgery, they won't give it to him. He has horrible, like bowel issues and a lot of pain. They won't give him any medication or treatments. The governor of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she is 100% aware of this. She's had his clemency paperwork on her desk for 6 years. She has not signed them and will not address anything. She has never said he's guilty. She has never said he's in there because he deserves it. I feel like never once addressed anything. We've sent thousands of emails, letters, phone calls. She never responds to any of us, including Temujin's own wife. So, and his wife, Paula, his biggest advocate, someone who works like around the clock, in addition to her full-time job, anything and everything to get him out. They've been married 5 years. They met while he was in prison. She's in Michigan, and she said, if there's anything I can do to help, please reach out to me. And she met him in person, and she's like, he's not this monster. Like, he's not. I think something else I want to stress is that, there's no consistency as far as sentencing. A guy in his cell block section got out last month who did things I will not say on the air, but things to his family that were the most depraved, psychopathic, like disgusting things. And he was in for 10 years. And not to minimize what happened to Scott, because it is absolutely awful and unforgivable. However, you do have someone who was shot one time 40 years ago, and that person is still in for life without parole. And again, that's not to minimize it in any way, but there's no consistency. So for him, seeing these people get out, it like, just, why am I in here when these people are obviously like a detriment to society? They are a danger. They are probably going to wind up right back in here, as many of them do. And these are people who admittedly have done these things. And, you know, he watches them go free.
That must be so, so difficult. You
It
just
is.
mentioned Temujin's wife, Paula, because I saw a very short clip of her giving an interview. But, you know, there's been many efforts for clemency, which have been repeatedly denied. And you're just talking about papers being on that lady, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, lady's desk. But one of the heartbreaking things I heard Paula say, his wife, is that there's no mechanism. This, I think I can quote her saying this verbatim. There's no mechanism to set him free, and that's a huge problem. Can you talk about that? Because it just, I mean, that's bananas.
It is. It is. Michigan started this thing a few years back called the Conviction Integrity Unit. And the idea, and that was when a new DA came in, Dana Nessel. And when she came in, she was to start this Conviction Integrity Unit, which was to investigate old crimes of people who have said they're innocent. And something I learned while talking to Temujin and interviewing him for almost 5 years, something I learned is that a lot of people don't say they're innocent. I was under the impression that a lot of prisoners walk around and they're like, I'm innocent, I shouldn't be there. And he's like, no, 95% of the people in here straight up admit, like, I did what I did. And usually if people say they didn't, they're either cowards or they're being honest. And after almost 40 years, he can tell, you know, but he has helped get people exonerated, and they have been. So he sees it happening. But the Conviction Integrity Unit, they're like, yes, Temujin's case is first. No question. We're doing that first. They took on his case first, worked on it a year and a half, which is insane. Look through thousands of pages of documents, which I've looked through as well for my book, and found absolutely no reason that he should be in prison. And the main person that worked on it all but said word for word, he's innocent, he shouldn't be there. And she said, well, I don't have final say, it is up to the DA. I put a transcript of that call because it was recorded, because they have a one party consent state. So Paula was able to record that conversation with her where she was basically admitting he was innocent. It was very obvious that because she kept saying, it's not up to me, though. It's not up to me. And we're like, why didn't you pressure more, you know, harder on him? So it comes back from the DA denied. One of the main issues is they never gave him a letter of why it was denied. So for a few years, he has had no idea of why it's denied. Why? Are you saying you found evidence? Are you saying what is the reason I'm denied? He was never given any explanation, no paper, no nothing. So you have to ask, I mean, these conspiracy theories are not conspiracy theories at this point. I mean, everything has happened. Why isn't he getting a paper? Does the paper exist? Why? There's a lot of monetary corruption going through, you know, of course, like, you know, donations for politicians and stuff. And I get into that as well. But why couldn't he at least have that letter of why he's denied? Worked on it a year and a half. You're not letting him free. Why? It's that simple. There's a reason why. Let's tell us why. And I told Temujin from day one, I said, look, I've been interviewing you over 5 years. If I find out one thing just one morsel of something that makes me think you did it after, researching these thousands of pages, I will absolutely change the trajectory of this book. And he said, you know what, Joy, there isn't anything. So that's fine. I respect that. And I couldn't find anything at all. And I would never, ever, ever do all of this for someone I even had the slightest doubt about.
Yeah. Well, that's the front cover of your book there, Joy. Our friend Temujin, the wrongful conviction of Temujin Kensu. I'll put the links in the description for everybody where people can get a copy if they would like to do so. What is what does the future look like? I mean, what's going to happen, or what? I mean, there are still a lot of people, and you've mentioned a few of them throughout the show today, working on Temujin's case. Yeah, what does the future look like?
We're not very hopeful, to be honest with you. We are scared that at some point it's going to be too late. We do have wonderful people like Kali Ali, Muhammad's daughter, who have gone to bat relentlessly for him. 8 innocence organizations, the co-founder of the Innocence Project, who also wrote in my book, as well as Kalia. Jack Lawrence, who is an Australian podcaster who has covered Temujin's case just so many times. 1 Minute Remaining is his show. So I had a lot of these people, even the cop who worked on the case. Like, I have so many people who have submitted things throughout my book, why they support him. So he does have a backing. He has FBI, he had senator, judges, lawyers. The lead advocate of the Supreme Court of India tweeted about him and my book. There are people all over the world who know he's innocent. However, the governor of Michigan will not relent. So, I don't know how it is in Australia, but here you can only, for governor, you can only be in 8 years. There is a term limit. So she's under lawsuits and stuff for other corruption. I don't know if you know about Flint, Michigan, with the water being poisoned and everything. She was in charge of that. She's behind that. She has done pay for play, where she has let people out who were guilty. She is under investigation for that. We do have maybe some hope that the new governor coming in will have his back. But again, that hasn't worked for 39 years. So I think at this point, like, our only hope would be someone huge, absolutely huge, in, pop culture or something coming out for him, and letting people know his case, because his case is known in the true crime realm, but it's not really known otherwise. So that was also one of my intentions with the book, is to open it up to people who can view it more as a humanitarian crisis than just a true crime story. So as far as, we don't have legal recourse or anything like that. It's unfortunately, it's probably going to depend on someone huge coming out.
How much longer does the lady of Michigan have left in her term?
About 1.5 years. People have already started campaigning One gentleman is campaigning on the injustice system and looking over cases of, people who say they're innocent and stuff. So did the current DA. I'm not sure that gives us any hope. But I am adamant in trying to get him to state something publicly that I can hold. We can hold him accountable and say, look, if you're elected, you said you would fight for him, that kind of thing. But we don't trust anyone as to. There have been a lot of people, even in true crime, podcasting, celebrities who have said, oh, we're coming out. And then not necessarily because they don't believe him anymore, because of PR, because of whatever, they don't come out. Even after months and months of saying, and then we don't tell anyone. And we're like so excited. Oh my God, they're huge. This is going to make a difference. And they don't come out. So it's, we've been burned before. So we just can't trust anything as gospel at this point.
Well, I hope the next governor of Michigan, what should I say, has perhaps has a bigger set or a bigger backbone than previous governors, perhaps. Should I put it like that?
Yeah.
And I think you're definitely right about like pop culture and I mean, celebrities aren't even a thing anymore. I mean, it's kind of shifted now. I mean, we all know that, but definitely, a popular icon throughout American culture would certainly, I'm sure, have to, if not shift anything, certainly shine a big spotlight on it and bring it attention that it greatly needs. That's for sure. I'm just going to pop your book up there on the stage again. I admire your research, Joy, to put that together because without people like yourself doing things like that, I mean, myself and my audience. I mean, people can tell us in the comments, have you heard of Temujin before? But I would say without people such as yourself who do that hard work and interviewing people and researching, we wouldn't hear about it. So I admire you a lot for doing that because it's a lot of dedication for what is it now really a humanitarian issue, like you said. It's
it is. It really is. And I do talk about throughout the book my flying to Michigan and going through the process of meeting him in prison and what that was like and trying to get in there as someone, mostly blind with a cane and how that could be a weapon and, just insane things. The interesting thing about that, however, is because of my blindness, I was fortunate enough to, kind of over a month say, look, ADA, and not as a you need to listen to me because of American Disabilities Act, but because I can't really read or write without any without my blind accessibility equipment. So I was able to, after everything, bring in a recorder, which hasn't been done in over 3 decades. So I could use the transcript.
Wow.
So I have over 4 hours of audio of my prison visit, which, like I said, hasn't been done in over 3 decades. So it's one good thing that came from my blindness, at least. So I do have that. I'm kind of thinking about who, I'd want to give it to. I have released clips here and there. And there's a lot of transcript in the book from that conversation.
Oh gosh, amazing. Just amazing work. And I don't think there's anything I can do apart from spread the interview far and wide, and tell people that I meet about Temujin, and people can go and do their own research, which we should all do anyway. But yeah, we're coming up to the end of the show, and like I said, congratulations on your book and your relentlessness. Is there a message you'd like to leave with the audience before we finish up the show, Joy?
Um, I think maybe the main thing is, I didn't write this book with the expectation it was going to get him out of prison. My feeling is that I just want people to know his story and not only find out when it's too late, because we constantly fear about his health and about his treatment in prison. So I would say, yes, buy the book, but also share his story with people. Even I just give an elevator pitch usually, like, okay, he has over a dozen witnesses. He was almost 500 miles away. What else do you need to know? I mean, the rest is like
Exactly.
fascinating and bananas, but at the same time, like that right there should be enough,
Right.
So I think just spreading his story, that is the absolute main thing, posting about it. If anyone wants to reach out to other podcasters and have them look into it, any kind of not necessarily promotion, but education about his story is
Yeah.
really the only thing that I think is going to help at this point.
Mhm. Well, as I said, the links are in the description for everybody, and also on the screen, people can go along to X and follow Joy there, and also your YouTube channel, because you do a podcast as well, and you have many guests on as well, so people can go along over there on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Joy, and um, I'm kind of speechless actually
Yeah.
as to what to say, other than keep up the great work, and I'm sure many people in the audience and myself, Temujin will be in our prayers, and hopefully, um, you know, 40 years is 40 years enough, and he makes it out of prison soon. That's uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I will gladly send you the book if you want to drop me your address in the DM.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
it's a huge support system in Australia as well. So thank you so much to all the people in Australia who have gotten the book and spread the message. So
Mm.
that is greatly appreciated. And Temujin talks about Australia quite often, actually, because of all the supporters. So that's huge. It means a lot.
Amazing. Amazing. Once again, thanks so much, Joy. Thanks to everybody in the audience, and thank you very much for all of your comments. Make sure you all stay relentless, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Joy.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Tonight, a special story you'll be talking about tomorrow.
Channel 7's Bill Proctor has been researching on his own time over the past 15 years the claims of a man who has spent the last 20 years of his life in prison. And Bill joins us now with his arguments of innocence. Bill?
Carolyn, the St. Clair County prosecutor presented sketchy evidence to the jury in this case. A murder, he said, was committed over a woman. But now, a highly respected jurist says the system has made a horrible mistake.
My impression of it was that had I been the trial judge, I would have directed a verdict for the defendant and of an acquittal.
Not guilty for lack of evidence would have been the decision of Thomas Brennan, the former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court and one of the founders of the respected Cooley Law School in Lansing. Brennan took the time recently to read every word of the 10-volume transcript in the 1987 murder trial that sent Frederick Freeman to prison for life. Had Judge Brennan presided over that case, he would have sent Freeman home instead of to prison.
It would have meant that the matter was taken away from the jury and the decision would be made by the judge, which a judge has the power and right to do.
The undisputed facts that the son of Croswell's mayor, Scott Arnold Macklem, died from a single shotgun blast in the parking lot of St. Clair Community College on the morning of November 5th, 1986. That Scott's fiancée, Crystal Merrill, had a brief, stormy relationship with Freeman and testified at trial of Freeman's intimidation and violence toward her when they dated. But she had no knowledge of who killed Scott, and the jury chose to ignore the testimony of some of the 19 people who insist that Freeman was hundreds of miles away in Escanaba the night before and the day of the Port Huron murder. Judge Brennan says much of the case was built on the testimony of a jailhouse snitch, small-time criminal Philip Joplin, who lied about a Freeman confession. Before he died, Joplin admitted to me his statements to the jury were fabricated.
The prosecutor's office told me that when I made that statement to make sure that I turned towards the jury and looked at the jury.
But did Mr. Freeman ever say that to you?
No.
Did he ever say something about the victim screaming when he shot him?
No.
Did he ever say he used a shotgun to kill somebody?
No.
To spend all my time telling anybody who would listen that I'm innocent, and suddenly to come forward and say, oh, but I'll tell you that I did it, and plus I'll tell you details about it, and that was, that was very shocking.
I interviewed Frederick Freeman in prison more than a dozen years ago. He had by then changed his name to Temujin Kensu to reflect his Buddhist religion. But he never backed away from his innocence. Action News also gave him a polygraph, and the longtime Michigan State Police examiner who gave the test said he passed it.
It clearly shows me that Mr. Freeman did not shoot Mr. Macklem.
They spent weeks talking about me in the papers before this happened. And with it being the mayor's son in an election year, I don't think anybody was willing to admit they put their foot in their mouth.
Much more important defense testimony would have come from Michelle Woodworth, the young pregnant woman who was living with Freeman on the day of the murder. She, too, has passed a polygraph and told the examiner that she did not testify because she was frightened and intimidated by police. But she insists that she and Fred were in their home in Rock, Michigan, near Escanaba, at about the moment that Scott was murdered in Port Huron. These two men, the owner and a student at an Escanaba martial arts studio, say that Freeman was with them about 2 hours after the murder. But 12 jurors, including this man, Richard Pellegrin, believed that it was possible, as the prosecutor theorized, that Freeman, despite having so little cash he couldn't pay his rent, somehow found the money to charter a private plane to fly in, commit the murder, and fly back north to set up his alibis. Mr. Pellegrin admits that no evidence of such a flight was ever presented in court.
But they never showed you a pilot?
No, sir.
And they never showed you a plane?
No, sir.
And they never showed you how it really happened?
No, sir. It was circumstantial. It was all circumstantial. We have no evidence.
It was just absolutely speculative and I think offensive to even allow that testimony without some connection to the case.
So why, the experts ask, was so much presented at trial that never should have been allowed at all? Most blame the ineffective defense presented by David Dean, the court-appointed attorney who was later proved to have a serious problem with alcohol and illegal drug abuse. Freeman's new lawyer, longtime criminal defense counsel Richard Lustig, has filed a federal writ to get Freeman released because he too believes he is innocent.
There was abuse by the prosecutor and maybe the defense was ineffective, but there's no way that a street guy, and that's what he probably was, can hire a plane and get to a location that's 400 miles away.
But no one, not even the prosecutor in the case, Robert Cleland, can show a murder weapon, a getaway car, a pilot, a charter flight record, a plane, or any physical evidence that Freeman killed Macklem. And this team of former federal agents, police detectives, and private investigators, after years of reviewing the case, believe the wrong man is in prison.
This week, a clemency board in Lansing is taking a closer look at Freeman's claim of innocence because so far, no law enforcement agency has stepped forward to help in the fight to save what's left of an innocent man's life. Also this week, actually beginning tomorrow, the Metro Times provides a lot more detail in this case, If you'd like to read, it's wonderful reading. It actually will take you 2 weeks, as the Metro Times starts this week and goes next week with more very specific details. An educator, experienced reporter did this and spent a lot of time picking up a lot of detail.
Now, Bill, you've been working on this story for 15 years. Do you really think he's going to get out of jail when all of this is said and done?
We're certainly hoping. It's been the kind of mountain that I never expected to have to climb. I thought you'd take evidence into people. As a matter of fact, that team that you saw at the end of that piece, they've been working on this hard enough to know who is responsible for this murder. They have a scenario. We have presented it to authorities. They so far have done nothing.
Well, maybe you'll get some answers this week when this clemency board takes a look.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill.